Okay. Hello, good evening, friends. Radhe Radhe. Hare Krishna Sharma ji. I welcome you all to today's presentation of practical application of ancient science of Ayurveda in modern times by Dr. Vinod Sharma ji. So let's all welcome him with a big round of applause. Okay, so Sharma ji has been practicing Ayurveda, homeopathy, yoga, and other healing modalities since last 18 years. He's traveled far and wide around the globe, helping people to achieve and maintain good health. So Sharma ji's clients come from all walks of life, from diverse backgrounds, from 8 months old infants to 80 years old senior citizens. I was very fascinated by his skill of pulse reading. He could tell me so much about my personality just by touching my pulse, and I was so excited and thrilled to know that's possible just by touching your pulse, and you can read someone's personality. So, and Sharma ji, I would like to introduce you to Dr. Tripti Jain. Dr. Tripti Jain is clinical psychologist, past life regression trainer, the founder, the think tank, and everyone's mentor of this Thinking Thursday group. And all of us here are her students. So over to you.
I'm very honored to meet her virtually today.
Thank you.
I've heard a lot about you from Varsha ji.
Okay. Varsha ji is always kind of encouraging me a lot, okay? But I just want to say that, everything moves because everybody's moving along. So otherwise you can't do anything. So I'm really grateful, Dr. Saab, that you're here with us. And we're going to take some really nice pearls of wisdom from you and apply it on ourselves, because that's very important. So please,
that's my objective, and I hope I succeed in my objective to attain my objective.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Thank you for your blessings.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Okay, so I'll just suggest everybody to mute themselves so we can have a smooth talk by Dr. Sharma. So please, everybody, please mute yourself, or I will have to mute you. So it's best that you do it yourself. Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Did Varsha ji tell you something about me before?
Yes. She's finished telling us about you. But we would love to hear something from you.
From you, yes. We would like you to introduce yourself.
Yeah. I think especially, we are always interested in knowing the person's journey as to how did you choose to become a doctor, especially in this science, and what actually encouraged you. I think that's something that we love listening to from people. So please, Dr. Saab, if you can share something.
Of course, I would love to do that very briefly. Actually, it was a kind of a very interesting journey. When I was studying in the college, I used to bunk my college lectures and go for yoga classes. This topic, this science attracted me. It was like natural attraction for me to learn yoga. And I was fortunate enough to find a nice yoga guru who taught me secrets of yoga and Ayurveda as well. The ashram in Mumbai where I used to learn yoga, many swamis, sannyasis used to visit, and I used to associate with them, spend time with them. And one of the Ayurveda acharya, he taught me how to read pulse, the secrets of Nadi Pariksha, we call it in Ayurveda. So he said that these kind of secrets, no institution will teach you, no university will teach you. He had learned from his guru and he taught me. So I had double advantage. That means whatever he learned from his guru, plus he added his own experience, his realization, and I was fortunate enough to get both. So I learned that as a hobby. I never imagined at that time that this will become a profession in future. So I got my degree. I completed my BCom degree course in financial accounting and economics, and I started working also as an accountant in Mumbai. And I came to Hong Kong also in '91 I remember the date. It was Wednesday, 7th of March, 1991. I arrived in Hong Kong by British Airways Air flight. So I came here to work as an operation manager. Main thing was to handle accounts in trading company. And slowly after the office hours, I started teaching yoga. At that time, yoga was very new in Hong Kong. So people, they did not know much about yoga. In 92, I started teaching yoga voluntarily at a yoga studio called International Yoga Institute in Hong Kong, the first ever registered yoga institute in Hong Kong. So one of the directors, he told me that I should approach some hotels, five-star hotels. They have health clubs. So they might be interested to start some yoga classes for their customers, for their clients. So I called one five-star hotel here in Hong Kong, and the health club manager spoke to me. Then I told her that I'm a yoga instructor from India. Would you like to start some yoga classes for your clients? She asked me, what is it? I said, yoga. So she asked me, how do you spell it? So I had to spell out Y-O-G-A. Now, if someone asks you to spell out yoga, you will think that no person doesn't belong to this planet. So those were the days, 92, early 92. Those were the days that yoga was just catching up, here in Hong Kong. Many people, they did not know about it. Now, it has because there are so many yoga studios. I think there are about 100 small and big yoga studios here in Hong Kong. So I'm hoping, and I'm quite confident also that slowly, gradually, and steadily, Ayurveda also will pick up, and it will come to that stage where people will be very familiar with the Ayurveda as well. So yes, I started my career here in Hong Kong also. I started working as a mainly accountant, operation manager. And after office hours, I started teaching yoga. Then I started my own small export business, trading business. So when I went on a business trip with my samples, catalogs, the products I used to deal in. So of course, some customers, they noted down the prices and the model numbers, everything, the consumer items, the electronic items I used to deal in. So when I came back to Hong Kong, I expected some orders from them of the products of what I showed them, the catalogs I showed them. But then they started sending me inquiries about their health issues, that I'm having this problem, my wife is having this problem, my child is having this problem. So I just took it as an indication from the Supreme Lord that, that I should go in this direction instead of wasting my time in export trading business, what so many other people were doing, especially Indians. So then I decided and I started teaching yoga full time at different health clubs in Hong Kong and some hotels also, and some private lessons also. And then slowly after 99, 2000, around that time, I started conducting seminars on Ayurveda to educate people. So we used to get some halls on rental basis, on hourly basis, and I used to give lectures, seminars, and we used to put a small ad in South China Morning Post, the leading newspaper in Hong Kong. A small column they used to put an ad, and they to invite people that in the evening 1 hour, 1.5 hour seminar will be there. Initially, we won't charge. I'm saying we means me and my wife, we used to go do it together. So we won't charge. It was free class. So hardly anybody would come. So when I started doing consultations for people, so one local client, Chinese lady, she told me, Mr. Sharma, actually it's a big mistake you are doing. In Hong Kong, the psychology of people is that if you give something free, they will not take it seriously. So you should start charging something. Then we started charging $150 for 1 hour, 1.5 hour seminar. Then so many people started coming. So slowly by this kind of practice, this kind of small publicity thing, what we used to do to educate people, then from those audience, people started coming for consultations, and by word of mouth, more and more people started coming. So now I don't look back, what I was doing before. There is no need for me to do that. Just moving forward by Krishna's mercy, I'm just moving forward. And I've been traveling to other countries also. Different clients, they invite me to conduct some seminars and do consultations for their friends and family members. So many countries I've traveled for this Ayurveda. So this is like, in a nutshell, how my journey started, particularly in Ayurveda. And the reason I developed interest in homeopathy also, that also is very interesting incident. When I was about 7, 8 years old, I developed some tonsils. So the mainstream doctor advised to get them removed. through surgery. So the date of surgery, the time, everything was fixed. So one day before the surgery date, when my mother was packing clothes for me and for herself also, she was going to stay with me in the hospital. So my uncle, he saw that something was happening, and then he asked my mother, "Where are you going? Where are you taking him?" So my mother said, for surgery for tonsils. At that time, my uncle was studying homeopathy. He was learning homeopathy. So he said, no need for surgery. He's such a young child. And, after surgery, so many precautions for 6-7 months he has to take. He has to be careful about. And in my childhood, I had habit of screaming. So he said after surgery, if he screams, it can be very damaging for his vocal cord. So don't go for surgery. Then he started giving me some homeopathic pills. Within a span of 7 days, 1 week, my tonsils completely got normalized. There was no swelling, no fever, nothing. So that memory is very strong in my subconscious mind. So that caused that interest, my interest developed to learn homeopathy as well. Then I learned homeopathic and biochemic remedies. So this is how I started doing
Wow.
practicing learning.
Really interesting and really fascinating. Wonderful, wonderful. So yes, Dr. Sharma, what are you going to share with us today? Please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. So now with regard to the topic we decided, Varshaji and myself, about this ancient science, how practically we can apply it in our modern life. So before
are you going to share
talking about the actual subject matter.
Hanji. No, I said, Dr. Saab, do you need to become a co-host to share a PPT or anything? Yes, okay. Okay. I'll just make you the co-host first.
For today's subject, I have not prepared any PowerPoint presentation.
Then it's all right. All right. Go ahead.
Because I was not knowing the format, how it works.
Yeah, no,
but
sure.
Hopefully, if we meet again next time, then I can prepare something.
No, that's fine. I'll just put the screen so that only you are visible. So I'll just make the speaker screen.
Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
So before we start, just give me a few seconds. I will chant a mantra before we start talking about the actual subject topic of today. Om Vasudevaya Vidmahe Vaidyarajaya Dhimahi Tanno Dhanvantari Prachodayat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So most of you must be knowing that the Lord of Ayurveda is called Dhanvantari, who is the incarnation of Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna. So this is the mantra respectfully we chant to seek his blessings, to get his blessings. So many of you are maybe probably familiar with this term Ayurveda, which literally means science of life. So this also is very interesting. It is not called medical science. It is called science of life. That means if we have problem or any kind of issue in any aspect of life, and we apply Ayurvedic principles, those applications can help us to resolve those problems. Once I mentioned same thing in one of the seminars. So one Indian gentleman asked me, Mr. Sharma, can Ayurveda help us to resolve financial problems? I want to put this question to you. Can anyone tell me, if you can unmute yourself, whoever is attending this, can anyone give me an answer whether Ayurveda can help to resolve somebody's financial problem?
Maybe yes.
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 Yeah.
Totally.
Yes.
Totally.
Maybe.
No.
Totally,
It's
sir.
yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Now,
If
because if mind, body, and soul is aligned, if all the elements are aligned, naturally you are going to create abundance for yourself.
Yes,
Very
and
true, very true. Yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And see, one of the things what we say, the real wealth, what we have is our health.
health is-
Am I right or wrong?
yes, yes,
So if we are
true.
not healthy, no matter how much wealth we have, we cannot enjoy that. So if we are unhealthy, the wealth becomes useless for us. From that perspective also, health is more important than any kind of wealth, material wealth we have, right? That's why there is a saying in English, some of you may be knowing about it. If wealth is lost, nothing is lost. If health is lost, something is lost. And if character is lost, everything is lost. So from that perspective, health is more important than any type of wealth we have in this material world. So yes, if we apply the Ayurvedic principles, we can maintain our health. And when we are healthy, we can earn wealth also, we can accumulate wealth also, and we can enjoy also. So in nutshell, briefly, the answer is yes. Ayurveda can help us to resolve even financial problems. If we are healthy, we can work hard and earn money. We can contribute to the economy of the countries also wherever we're staying, right? So from that perspective, Ayurveda can be very helpful. Now, many times people, they say this is an ancient science. And it is believed it's a very ancient science, but at the same time, it is timeless. It will never get absurd. It will never get obsolete. It will never become useless. And to be honest, from my practice after meeting so many clients in different parts of the world, I realized that actually the need for applying Ayurvedic principles in our modern life is much more than it was before. Few decades ago, if you see our previous generations, their life was very simple and they were very well connected with the Mother Nature. And because of that, they used to enjoy a healthy life. Now, it may be true that modern science is very helpful in increasing the span of life, duration of life. But when we talk about the quality of life, it was much better in the previous generations, right? So quality is more important than quantity. And of course, when quantity is there, it is associated with quality, then no doubt about, it is a very good thing to do, to have as a blessing. So the need of applying Ayurvedic principles is much more now. Now, how Ayurveda can help us in our modern life? Because, the life has become so fast, so people have become so much impatient. Everybody wants very quick results. But very simple things I want to share with you, very, very practical kind of guidelines. And I would request all of you, whoever is attending now and in future also, whoever hears this on YouTube, start applying these simple things, simple guidelines, and you will see the difference. You will start seeing the positive difference in your life in few days' time. You don't have to wait for weeks and months, few days' time. Now, practical example. When we get up in the morning, what Ayurveda says, do not get down off the bed immediately. Wait for a minute, at least. You wait for a minute. What you do, you sit quietly, allow your breathing to become more regular, more consistent. Then what you do, you take a deep breath in, then hold your palm underneath your nostril, and you breathe out. You exhale. You will notice that the force of the air from one nostril will be more than the other nostril. It keeps on changing, right? Throughout the day also, in 24 hours, our breathing keeps on changing from one nostril to other. Only people, the yogis, advanced yogis who can allow the prana to go through their Sushumna Nadi, then both the nostrils are active. But common people like us, we cannot do that. That's why the breathing keeps on changing. One side is stronger than the other. So whichever side is stronger, when we exhale, we feel the force of the air is stronger. We should put that foot down on the floor. Now that will allow us, our energy, to get attuned with the universal energy. Now it is said that, we cannot avoid problems in life. Life means problems will be there. According to, depends on our karma, right? We cannot avoid the problems. What we can do, what is in our hand, how we deal with the problems. So when our energies are tuned with the universal energy, our rationale will work very well whenever we face any problematic situation. So we won't panic. We can handle that situation, problematic situation, very rationally, objectively, and try to resolve the problem intellectually. So this ability we will get just by putting the right foot down. Right means appropriate foot down, not the right foot literally. Whichever, if the left nostril is active, we put the left foot down. So that putting the left foot down, that becomes the right foot down, appropriate foot down. So if we do that throughout the day, you can see that, I heard from many of my clients, when they do that, they say that, it makes such a big difference. Otherwise, they feel so much irritable, so upset very easily, cranky for small things. But by doing this kind of simple method, the day goes very smoothly, very peacefully, very calmly, relatively. Somebody has any question? Anybody has any question here?
Yes, sir. I have a question.
Yes.
Sir, what is the rationale behind this? Like if your Ingla and Pingla both nadis, so if the right is active and if I'm putting my right foot, so which part of my brain, is it that part of my brain is stimulated? What is the rationale behind this?
See, Ayurveda is very subtle science. It goes deeper than the brain. It goes to our mind and our nervous system and our intellect. So very rightly you said, right is Pingla Nadi and the left is Ida. So suppose Ida is working, we put the left foot down. Then we are attuning ourselves with the universal energy. And that universal energy will help us by strengthening our nervous system, keeping our intellect intact and our mind balanced.
Okay.
So when these things are there, then our ability to deal with the problem improves.
Okay.
So this is the rationale behind it. This is the logic behind it.
Okay.
Does it make sense to you?
Yes. Thank you, sir. Yes.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Yes.
I had a question.
Anybody else? Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Dr.
Rahulji.
I wanted to ask that if both are working equally, then you have to get up with both the feet on the ground together.
Yes, it is very seldom, very, very unlikely that you will find that both the nostrils are working equally. As I said, the advanced yogis could do it, whose prana would be flowing through the Sushumna Nadi. When the prana vayu flows through the Sushumna Nadi, then only the Ida and Pingla can be more balanced. Otherwise, one will be more active than the other one.
And
But if you're fortunate enough, if you have good yoga practice, and you are able to control the prana through the Sushumna Nadi, then both the nostrils are equally active. Then you need to put both the feet down together.
Dr. Saab, so it can change like per day. Like one day this one nostril is working better and the other day could be the other one, or does it remain consistently one?
Not the whole day. It keeps on changing depending on our activity, depending on our thought process, depending on our consciousness. When we are angry, the right nostril become very active.
Okay.
And when we are feeling calmer, quiet, passive, then the left nostril will be active. And now, since you have raised this point, it works in a way like, when we want to calm down, like for example, practical example I give you. Sometimes, some clients who have some blood pressure issue, they call me that, my blood pressure seems to be very high. So how can I do it? How can I normalize it? So what Ayurveda suggests, even in yoga also, the suggestion is given, that person should lie down on his right side. So when we lie on our right side, lie down on the right side, the left nostril becomes active and it has calming effect, cooling effect, because it is connected with the moon. So the blood pressure will normalize. The higher blood pressure will normalize, and vice versa. If somebody somebody's blood pressure is low, that person has to lie on the left side. So the right nostril will be active, the Pingala Nadi will be active, which has connection with the sun. So that, does it answer?
Yes, Dr. Saab.
Yes. Anybody has any other question?
Yes, yes,
Yes.
me. Yes. So, for example, if somebody have a heart disease and also including the high blood pressure, right? And then when she wakes up, like,
Yes, Jenny.
yes, hi, and she should always get up on her left side, right? When she gets up in the morning. For example, she should maybe when she sleeps, she should also.
Okay. Oh, who are you talking about, Jenny?
Hi, this is me, Jenny. Yes.
My request to you would be, all the participants, I would
Yes.
suggest, you can keep the personal questions, very specific questions, to the end of the session.
Okay.
During the
Yes.
session, when I ask you to ask any questions, try to keep it general, which can be
Okay.
helpful for all the participants.
Okay. So if high blood
Yeah.
high blood should sleep on the right side or left side?
To lower the higher blood pressure, one should lie down on the right side.
Right side. Okay, good. I write down. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yes, you're welcome. So we proceed. So this is the first thing when we wake up in the morning, right?
Yes. Yes.
So before getting off the bed, getting down on the bed, what should we do? So this kind of guideline is given. From these kind of things, if you see from getting up in the morning till the time we go to bed, all the activities, what we do during the day, if we apply Ayurvedic principles, Ayurvedic guidelines, our activities can go very smoothly, and we can get good results of those actions. Positive results can be increased, and the negative results can be reduced by following the guidelines which are given in Ayurveda. Now, after we get off the bed, it is said that first thing we should do, drink about 500 to 600 milliliter of warm water, plain water. No need to add anything in that. That water will work, which will have flushing effect on our toxic matters in the particularly in the digestive system, in the colon. And now, guideline is given, specific instructions are given in Ayurveda how to drink water. I want to ask questions, if you don't mind, if somebody can answer me. How to drink water? It may sound a very simple, silly question or other, but still it is very meaningful to know how to drink water. Many people, they don't know how to drink water.
Sip by sip, not drink it at one go.
Very true. Yes.
Drink
What
water.
else?
And we should
Drink now.
sit down.
Particularly,
drink
first
water.
thing, the first water we drink in the morning, the specific instruction is given in Ayurveda. How to drink water first thing in the morning. Can anyone say? Can anyone guess?
Gargle it and drink it.
Rinse your mouth and drink it. Not exactly.
Drink before you rinse your mouth. Drink the water before you.
Now in this regard, it is said that if you feel dryness in your mouth, if you feel dryness in your throat, and if you think that you may be breathing in and out through your mouth while you are asleep, so in that kind of situation, better to rinse the mouth first before drinking water. But if you do not have these kind of symptoms and you feel that you kept your mouth closed while you were asleep, then before rinsing your mouth, you drink the water. Because the saliva which is produced, the bacteria which are accumulated in the mouth is kept closed. Those can be very potent to reduce the toxicity in the body. So in that kind of situation, person can drink water even without rinsing the mouth. But if there is dryness felt in the mouth or in the throat, then it's better to rinse the mouth first. So my point I wanted to make, the specific thing, instruction given in Ayurveda, the first water, what we drink in the morning, never ever drink water in the standing position. Never. It is said that if someone drinks water in the standing position, that person invites problems with his or her knees. If somebody already has problem with the knees, weakness of the knees or stiffness of the knees, and that person is taking different kind of treatments, taking some kind of medicines and all that, magnesium and different kind of things to improve the flexibility of the knees, no such health supplements will be so effective as they should be if the person has the habit of drinking water in the standing position. Now, the instructions which are given in Ayurveda with proper explanation why it is mentioned in Ayurveda that one should never drink water, first thing particularly, first water in the morning in the standing position. Because what happens when we wake up in the morning, we have not moved around, the flexibility is not there, movement is not there in the joints. So if we drink water, the air is pushed by the water towards the lower part of the body. And particularly when there is not so much of movement, not so much of blood circulation, and when there is lack of blood circulation, the oxygen circulation is less. And the oxygen circulation is less, the warmth is not generated in the joints. So because of the cooling effect, the water goes there, the air will affect the joints, and it will cause more weakness and stiffness of the joint, particularly the knees. So because of that reason, in Ayurveda it is mentioned that one should never drink water, particularly the first water in the morning, in the standing position. Always try to sit on the floor. On the floor is preferable, but due to any reason, if you're not able to sit on the floor, then at least sit on the chair. Sit on the chair and drink water sip by sip. So just simple habit, which is our daily habit, drinking water. Nice instructions are given, guidelines are given with proper explanation. So from these kind of things, you can understand how deep Ayurveda is and how useful it is in our daily life. Does it make sense to you, all of you?
Thank
Yes,
you so much. We were knowing about it that we should not drink water in the standing position, but no one has told me the reason behind it. Thank you so much. This is very interesting.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Since you mentioned like this, I would like to. Yes, anybody wants to say something?
Is drinking in with a glass is fine? Is it better, or is it to be drunk like directly from, the hand or something? What?
We need to be practical. Now we are not living in villages or something. Better to make the use of cups or glasses what you have at home. It is not necessary to drink from the hand, but yes, that is more natural. Now, Rahulji, since you raised this point, even while eating food also, Ayurveda says it's better to use the hand directly instead of creating a barrier by using forks and spoons. The reason why it is said, use our hand, the fingers, 4 fingers and the thumbs for eating. You can experiment on yourself, or you might have realized also personally by doing that. The satisfaction what we can get by eating food directly through our hands is much more than if we use the spoons and forks.
Yes, absolutely, doctor. I've done.
Do you
that
agree with this thing?
Absolutely.
Yes. Now, why we get that satisfaction? First is the sense of touch. We don't only eat through our mouth. We eat through our eyes also. We eat through our nose also, sense of smell, and through the sense of touch. With all these jnana indriyas, the senses of perception, we consume different things, inject different things in our body, right? So the sense of touch, when the food is touched, we know the temperature, whether the food is hot or not, and then we eat it. Now these 4 fingers and the thumbs, they represent 5 elements. Thumbs represent fire, index fingers represent air, middle fingers represent space, ring fingers represent earth, and the little fingers, small fingers represent water element. So all these 5 elements are there in our fingers. So when we use these fingers, 4 fingers and the thumb, so the 5 elements which are, later on grouped in 3 doshas, Vata, Pitta, Kapha. So these 5 elements we are supplying to the body. So that also helps us to balance these 3 doshas, Vata, Pitta, Kapha. For that reason also it is said, it's better to use the hands directly for eating. It gives us more satisfaction, and from the health perspective also, more practical and more useful. Does it make sense, Rahulji?
So you
Absolutely.
said the one, and then the second one is?
Sorry?
The first one is fire, and
Yes,
then
Jenny?
you said
Thumb,
Right.
thumb represent
fire.
thumb, fire,
Yes.
index finger, air,
Air,
middle finger, space,
a
ring
space.
finger, earth, and the little finger, water.
So what is space? Like, that is so different from
Is
Chinese.
ether.
Oh, space. Okay,
In what way it
okay.
is different?
Okay, fire, air, space, earth, and water. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, interesting. That's very interesting.
Yes.
Yes.
So for that reason, in our Vedic culture, the traditional Indian custom is to use the hand directly for eating instead of using full spoons and forks.
So that's why it's better to
So
eat.
I will go step by step.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's better
Yes,
to
go ahead,
eat
go ahead.
in the Indian way, use the fingers. Good, right? Use the fingers to eat.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
And you can experiment on yourself, Jenny, what I said, when you use your fingers and thumb, you'll get more satisfaction.
I'm going to do it.
Sir, can I ask a question?
Yes, please. Yes, please. Go ahead.
So, like you said, that the index finger is the vayu, right? Air.
Can you repeat, please?
The index finger is symbolic of the vayu element, the air
Yes.
element.
Yes.
Right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
now,
Correct.
in North India, when we eat with our hands, we have a practice of not using the index finger. So can I also derive a conclusion that if we have an excess of vayu in our body, or like we have a vata dosha, so not using the index finger while eating would make sense?
Yes. Now see, many people you might have seen, they keep this index finger like this when they are eating.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Now, what is the word or the name of the index finger in Sanskrit and in Hindi?
Tarjani. Tarjani.
Tarjani, right? That means it should be discarded. इसका त्याग कर देना चाहिए. When we chant mantra on the beads also, we don't touch the beads with this index finger. We chant like this.
Yes.
We keep this index finger out. Correct? We have the Gaumukhi in which we put the beads for chanting beads. So the index finger, there is a special hole in that. Index finger is kept out. Index finger doesn't touch the chanting beads. So iska tyag kar dena chahiye. So this is the spiritual or philosophical reason. But from the Ayurvedic perspective, what you said, yes, people who have Vata dosha, they can keep the index finger aside, should not touch the food with that.
Right.
But generally, what Ayurveda says, we need to use the index finger because it will have balancing effect on the imbalanced Vata dosha. It will correct the imbalance. It is not that if somebody has Vata dosha and that person is using the index finger also while eating, that Vata dosha will increase. On the contrary, it will reduce.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
as
thank
I
you so
mentioned to you, there is some philosophical, spiritual reason for which we keep this index finger aside. Now, since you asked me about,
Yes, I've heard they also say that during
yes, please. Yes, go ahead.
during a havan or something, when we give the ahuti, then also we do not use the index finger. So the food that we eat is also like an offering to our body, and so
Very
we
true.
do not use the
Very true. When we do the offer the ahutis in yagna, we only use these middle two fingers and the thumb. We don't even use the small finger also.
Yes.
So this is actually, you know, if we talk about these subjects, then our discussion will go in a different direction, because it's a spiritual topic. I can discuss, I can give you the answer also why we use these two fingers and the thumb. There is a philosophical, spiritual reason behind it. But I want to restrict our discussion on the subject matter of Ayurveda. So yes, that is a good point, that, you know, because we are offering to our body and the Agni is in our stomach. So that is also Havan, we are doing it, right? The Ahuti we offer to the Havan Kunda, and here the Agni is in our stomach. So you're offering the food as an Ahuti to our stomach. So we are using that way. So we keep this index finger aside. Now, same rule applies to using left hand. From the Vedic perspective, left hand should not be used for eating. Always one should eat with the right hand. Now, we have seen in our custom, you know, in our Indian custom, people, normally they don't use the left hand for eating. Majority of people, they use only right hand. If somebody is using left hand, that person is corrected by the elders in the family. Don't use your left hand. And if you ask the reason why left hand cannot be used, they don't know the reason.
Oh.
Does anyone know what's the reason we should not use the left hand for eating?
I think one of the common reasons that people usually give is because it is used for washing our private parts during.
Very true. Very true. But see, that should not, that's very kind of a gross level reason, but there is very deep, sublime reason behind it. Very philosophical.
Is it the giving and receiving?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Is it giving
Yes,
and receiving?
giving and receiving what?
Like generally.
Can you elaborate that?
Yeah, left is for receiving and right is for giving.
What
Left
what
hand
do you
is-
receive through left hand?
We receive, see all the
What do
divine
we
energy
receive?
and everything. The divine energy.
Why? Why? Why left hand?
My knowledge is only up to this thing that we receive.
Why can't we receive through the right hand? You're right. You're absolutely right. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you.
See, the universal energy we receive from the universe through the left side. Now, why left side? Where is our heart?
Right. It's tilted little
Yes, where is our heart?
It is tilted little left side.
It is towards the left side, right? And our spirit soul resides in the heart region. So spirit soul receives the energy from the universe, which is on the left side in the heart. So that is the receiving part. And the right side is for releasing. So when we are releasing and we are eating our meal with the right hand, so we are reinvesting that energy within our body. We are not wasting it, we are reinvesting it. So because of that, right hand is recommended for eating. Now see the connection between our traditional science and the modern language. In our Indian language, we call it Daya and Baya, right? Daya is right hand and Baya is left hand. Am I right or wrong? Anyone? You can unmute yourself and you can reply.
Correct.
Yes, we said the right is Daya and left is Baya, right?
Yeah, right.
Now in English language, This hand is called left. Why? It should be left aside. It should be kept aside when we are doing some important work. Does it make sense to you?
Yes, it does. It does make sense. Yes.
Why in English language, Maya Hath is called left? It should be left aside when we are doing some important work.
For receiving the universal energy.
Yes, receiving energy is the left side, not only the left hand. The whole left side we receive the energy.
Dr. Saab, does it work also for the right-handed and left-handed people the same way?
Yes, yes. Unless somebody has the heart on the right side.
Okay.
Have you ever heard anybody saying that the person has a heart on the right side?
Dextrocardia.
It's a condition. Sometimes the entire organs is the other way around. It happens sometimes, I think.
Yes, yes, yes. Very, very few people in the world, they are like that. First time I heard in 2018, I had a client from Australia when I was giving her the background about the whole Ayurveda, checking the right and left pulse. What is the significance of that? Then at that time, she told me that her heart is on the right side. She was born like that. And the liver was on the left side. Normally, the heart is on the left side and the liver on the right side. But in her case, the heart is on the right side and liver on the left side. So yes, there are very few people in the world who are born like that. But generally, the heart is on the left side. So the receiving part is the left side. But if somebody has heart on the right side, then the person's right side is considered as receiving part, receiving side. So now moving, yes, anybody has any question here?
So if some people, the heart is in the left side, then this opposite, they can use opposite hand, right? So
Correct.
because if
yes, you're right.
I'm usually people are in the right side of the heart, right? But some people are in the left side, which is rare case. So then they can use the opposite hand, which is they can use the left hand to eat. If the
I
heart
need
is
to
on the
correct.
left.
Most of the people, they have the heart on the left side. Yes, not on the right side.
Yeah, both have left side, left side. But some people have in the right side. Few people.
Yes.
They can do it the opposite.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Thank you.
So now moving forward, I told you about, drinking water. One has to drink water in the sitting position.
Yes.
Now, after that, one has to clear the bowels. Now, see the routine which is mentioned in Ayurveda, the guidelines which are given for our daily habits, the sequence is mentioned. If we follow the sequence, many of the health problems can be resolved, and the tendencies what we may have of having problems in future, those problems can be prevented also. The sequence is getting up in the morning, drink water. After that, clear the bowels, remove the toxins from the body before eating anything. Many people have this habit of, they call having the breakfast at the bed, bed tea or something like that. Now this has become, in big cities, this is becoming like a fashion. But actually it is a very unhealthy habit. Without clearing the bowels, one should not be eating anything.
Oh.
So clear the bowels first before you put something in your stomach. What happens? Now there is a reason behind it also. If we eat something before clearing the bowels, what will happen? When we eat, again, it will push the food down. The air also will push down. So the Samana Vayu, which is in the stomach, Samana Vayu is pressurized. So Samana Vayu feel the pressure from the top of the food, which is being sent through the mouth. And then from the bottom, the Apana Vayu will start rising up. And it will have imbalancing effect on the Samana Vayu. Then it will cause indigestion. If Samanavaya is imbalanced, the Pachaka Pitta, the digestive fire in the stomach, cannot function very well. The person will definitely have indigestion problem. So to avoid having indigestion problem, or if somebody has the indigestion problem, correct this habit. When this habit is corrected, without taking medicine, the indigestion problem can be resolved. So clear the bowels first, and then after that, you can have your breakfast. And breakfast is very, very important in our modern life, because we have lunch around 1 o'clock on an average. I'm talking about. So if we are having main meal lunch at 1 o'clock, so it is better to have something for breakfast. We should not keep stomach empty for a very long time. Otherwise, the stomach muscles will remain very contracted. And without having breakfast, if we have lunch, a big meal at lunchtime, then the stomach muscles will not open up to accommodate that food what we are consuming at lunchtime. And then that will cause contraction of the muscles, and it will cause bloated feeling in the stomach if we have heavy meal without having breakfast. Channel the food channel and the stomach muscles, so that by lunchtime the stomach muscles are open properly, so that we can eat proper meal, heavy meal, without feeling discomfort in the stomach. Does it make sense, whatever I've been telling you so far, to all of you?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Totally.
Yes,
Yes,
totally.
yes.
Very interesting.
And
Dr. Saab, I had a question.
See, these are very simple things, our regular habits. But yes, go ahead.
No, I mean to say that there's a common saying that you should eat like a king, and like in the morning, and as you progress through the day, the intake of food should become lesser. So is that not the correct way?
Now, this is a modern or Western concept, I would say, rather. I've heard this many times. People, they say that, especially the Western world, this is a common saying they have. The breakfast time, you eat like a king, or something like that, right? And lunchtime, eat like a, sorry?
Yeah, something like that. And
lunchtime, eat like a what?
I don't know, but
like a pauper.
Pauper, yeah, it's
Like a pauper.
Papa is for dinner. Papa is
dinner.
for
Yeah,
dinner.
pauper is for dinner. So that's the last one.
No, breakfast like emperor, lunch like king, and dinner
Correct.
like pauper.
See, if somebody has breakfast as a king, definitely that person will be forced to eat like a pauper in the evening.
Okay.
Because his digestive system will not work very well. We sleep for 6 to 8 hours, supposing, on an average. So 6 to 8 hours, the stomach muscles have remained closed, contracted. And all of a sudden, when we wake up, we have a big meal like a king, you said, emperor or king. Stomach muscles need time to open. The food channels also need time to open. And if we put so much pressure, definitely it will cause the air imbalance, vata dosha. Vata will get very disturbed. So that person's digestive system will become very badly affected. And because of that, no appetite in the evening, that person, as I said, he will be forced to eat like a pauper. It is not like his choice to eat like that, but he will be forced to eat like that because no appetite. The body will not be able to accommodate that food. So what Ayurveda says in the morning for breakfast, eat like a prime minister, like a wazir, like a pradhan mantri. Very wisely, select food for breakfast very wisely, like a minister. And then you can eat like a king, like an emperor at lunchtime, when your fire element, pitta, is very strong at lunchtime. And then in the evening, to unwind the system, to relax the system, do not put too much pressure on the digestive system to forcing it to work when we want to relax, when you want to fall asleep. Otherwise, the sleep will be disturbed. If the digestive system is active, working to digest the food, how can it allow our mind to relax? Our mind also will be very active. So the sleep will be disturbed. So in the evening, eat like you said, like a pauper, very minimal food. So this is the way we have to choose the quantity of the food, how to eat at what time. Hopefully, when we meet again, if we continuously meet, I will explain to you that why this kind of specific guidelines are given, how much to eat at what time. There's a Ayurvedic reason behind it. It's not, the sages, the seers, they wrote this info, the books on Ayurveda, not because they were sitting idle in the forest to kill their time. They started writing books on Ayurveda. They compiled the information for the benefit of mankind, and we need to take advantage of it. And most of, you are from the Indian background, Indian subcontinent. So we are fortunate that, we have very rich heritage. Our ancestors, they have left very rich heritage for us, and we need to take advantage of that. Not only we should take advantage of that, but we should share this knowledge with others also, so that they also can enjoy good health in this life. Are you agreeable to this?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
How much time do we have?
Time, sir. 15-20 minutes easily. More.
If we don't have too many questions, then maybe you can just go on. And as you're going on, Sharma ji, then maybe people have questions they can ask. So we would like to know what kind of breakfast we should eat. That's very important. You said eat wisely, but what kind of breakfast should we eat? Should we eat that upmas and pohas and doklas and whatever that people...
Sir, if you can just explain broadly, like proteins, carbs, and fats. So what should be more in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening? So broadly, if you can just explain that.
Yes, I will try to include the modern concept, what you said, proteins, carbohydrates, fat, and everything. From Ayurvedic perspective, we mainly focus from the qualities of the food based on what kind of dosha they have. Not the eating dosha, the dosha they have, whether they are vata oriented, pitta oriented, or kapha oriented. So the whole day, we have 24 hours, and these three doshas, they rotate in 24 hours. On an average, each dosha is for 4 hours. So supposing when we wake up in the morning, is the kapha time. 6 to 10 is the kapha time. 10 to 2 is the pitta time. 2 to 6 is the vata time. So that whole cycle repeats. Again, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. is kapha time. 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. is pitta time. And 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. is vata time. So we wake up in the morning during the kapha time. Our breakfast is during the kapha time. That is between 6 and 10. 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. So kapha time, kapha means, a combination of water and earth. Very gross elements. So we should not eat, I think Varshaji said about upma or something like that. No need to eat those kind of kapha oriented food, heavy food. It has to be very light food. Some simple porridge can be acceptable, or some fruits, or even somebody has kapha dosha. If the individual is predominantly having kapha dosha, that person can also even have nuts in the morning, like pistachios, cashew nuts, peanuts, those kind of things. So that is more specific kind of guideline. But in general, because breakfast is during kapha time, so we should not eat kapha food. Kapha food means the food which is heavy, like the roots, the strong pulp, bananas, avocados, those kind of things, generally should be avoided in the kapha period. If somebody needs to eat that, or somebody wants to eat that, then there is a solution also how to eat that. Now, for example, if somebody wants to eat avocado for breakfast, so yes, can eat avocado during kapha time. Then, to speed up the digestion of the kapha-oriented food, add some pitta dosha to that by sprinkling some black pepper powder and cinnamon powder to it. Then person can enjoy kapha food during kapha time. Normally, if we eat the same kind of food during that dosha period, kapha period, suppose we eat kapha oriented food, it becomes difficult to digest. Then lunchtime, we don't have any appetite to eat. So Ayurveda is very practical. The solution is given. If somebody wants to enjoy kapha oriented food during kapha period, can enjoy, but adding the pitta to that by adding black pepper powder and cinnamon powder. So person can enjoy the breakfast. So the point I want to make, during kapha period, the breakfast is during kapha period, one should eat very light, not any heavy meal. Liquid, semi-liquid, so that it can be passed to the digestive system very easily. The person will not feel kind of a choking effect in the throat or in the food channel. The air element can circulate very smoothly without any difficulty. If we eat any dry stuff without so much of water element to it, or without any moisturizing like almond oil or olive oil or sesame oil or pure ghee or butter, then it will cause more dryness in the channel, and then people can have burping effect or discomfort feeling in the chest, or some people can even feel a choking effect, especially people who are over 50. When the vata dosha becomes very strong, it has strong effect on our body, our biology. So such people can feel very suffocated also, like choking effect, cannot breathe. So to avoid those kind of symptoms, it is better to eat semi-solid food, liquidy food, porridges in the morning. Does it answer your question, Prabhasha ji?
Yes, Sharma ji. Yes, definitely.
Does it answer your question?
Yes, yes, it does. It does. But because actually, I start
Yes.
my day with fruits and nuts and smoothie. But I was asking because a lot of my clients, they always say, oh, we eat poha, we eat upma, we eat dokla, we eat. That's why I just wanted to make sure that is that the right
Yeah,
way.
so these kind of food stuff. Yes.
Yeah, so that was my.
Yeah, so normally, see, if we eat occasionally, yeah, if we eat these kind of things occasionally, our body can cope with that. Our body can adjust, but should not make a habit of having these kind of breakfast every day.
Right.
On regular basis, to maintain our good health and allow the digestive system to work in a proper, appropriate manner, it is better to eat semi-solid food for breakfast.
Dr. Sharma,
Anybody has a question?
If I may ask a question, what does Ayurveda say about non-vegetarian food? Is it okay? Is it not okay?
Now, strictly speaking, from the Ayurvedic perspective, it is not recommended. Why it is not recommended? Because we talk about the prana in the food. The fresh food and fresh fruits, fresh food stuff has prana, life. So when we eat that food which has prana, then it can enhance our lifespan. It can give us energy. But if any food item, food object, food substance is a dead matter, how can it give life to us? How can it enhance our lifespan? So from a purely Ayurvedic perspective, it is not recommended. Because if you see our physiology also, anatomy, the way our body is made, the intestines we have, the length of our intestines, they are 4 times longer than our body's height. They are coiled inside, like a conch shell, right? If somebody is from the yoga background, in yoga, we have one cleansing process called Shankha Pakshalana to cleanse the conch shell. The intestines, they are like a conch shell, coiled inside. So when we eat these dead matter, it remains in our digestive system for a very long time and it becomes very toxic. It increases the acidity in our body. The level of acid in our body increases. We have to maintain the more alkaline level in the body. So from that perspective also, this is scientifically proven. And I want to share with you, I've come across clients, even some of my clients, they are mainstream doctors. When I speak to them, discuss with them about this diet, about meat-based diet, they also tell me, they admit, supposing they have to treat a patient having cancer. So they say that modern science also has proved that for cancer patients, meat products are like poison. Meat-based diet is like a poison, and they should not eat. But unfortunately, as a medical professional, they cannot directly tell their patients to stop eating meat, because otherwise, their license can be revoked. So indirectly, they tell them that, should try to minimize it or something like that, but they cannot tell their patients to stop eating meat, even though they know that it is harmful for them. See, this is the society, this is the world we are living in. But in Ayurveda, there is no such hesitation. Whenever somebody wants to make an appointment with me to come and see me, first thing I tell the person, are you willing to become vegetarian? At least for 6 weeks. If you're not willing to become vegetarian, you don't want to become vegetarian, then there is no need for you to waste your time and waste my time. If you're willing to become vegetarian, then I'll be there to help you. So the basic point I want to make, the food stuff should have some prana. Then only it will give some prana to us, some life to us. Otherwise, it will become like a burden on us.
Doctor, I had a
it will
question.
suck up our energy.
Yes.
Doctor, is it correct that the Charak Samhita and the Sushrut Samhita have actually recommended some non-veg diet for certain ailments?
See, the original Ayurvedic texts, yes, some kind of meat items are recommended to cure some disease. Now here you need to understand the deeper philosophy, the deeper reason why it is recommended for human beings to eat flesh of other animals. Now the animals, their consciousness, they evolved, they are not so much evolved. So the word which is used to cure somebody's disease, some human being's disease, by using the flesh of any animal, the animal is sacrificed, not slaughtered. So there is a proper process of sacrificing that animal, and after that using that animal's flesh. Immediately after the animal is sacrificed, immediately the flesh is used. It is not kept in the cold storage for months and years. It is not like that. So yes, to cure some diseases, some meat, animal's flesh is recommended. For a person who has higher responsibility in the society, who can be very valuable for many human beings in the society. For such a person, like emperors, the meat stuff, meat-oriented food is called Rajasic and Tamasic food. So Rajasic means which has Rajogun, or which is most suitable for Rajas, for emperors, for kings, so that they have some anger in them, some passion in them, Rajogun. And some Tamogun also. Tamogun in the sense that they want to protect their territory. So, considering any limited space of land as our own is a sign of ignorance, because nothing belongs to us at the end of the day. So that Tamogun is required for the emperors to protect their territory, so that they think that this nation belongs to us, this geographical region belongs to me, I am the ruler, so I need to protect it. So to have that kind of concept, that kind of mindset, some Tamogun also is required. And to protect that passion is required. For that, the emperors were allowed to eat meat. And if they had any disease, to cure the disease also, like for example, if somebody had paralysis, a recommendation is given in Ayurveda to use pigeon's blood for massaging, because pigeon's blood is very hot. So when that blood is used for massaging, it can help the person to be cured from the paralysis.
I think also
these are exceptional situations. Specific situations. It is not recommended for common people like us. But unfortunately, it has become like a norm. Common people also eat. They say, oh, it is mentioned in Ayurveda, so we can eat it. But it is not true. I give you practical I want to share with you practical case history. Some time ago, I went to Taiwan. So I was doing consultation for an Indian origin person, Gujarati man. So when I was giving him the dietary recommendations, so I just mentioned only about the vegetarian food. I did not ask him that whether he was vegetarian or not, because I presume, because most of Gujaratis are vegetarians. But when he said that he enjoys eating meat, then I was shocked. I asked him, why do you eat meat? Because he said, we are Khatris. My surname is Khatri. That means warrior, Kshatriyas. So I asked him, are you in the Taiwan's army force? He said, no, I'm a trader. I do garments business. I said, you are a trader, you're a Vaishya, you're not Kshatriya. So why are you eating meat? So when I explained to him in more detail about the concept of Khatri and Vaishya, Brahman and Shudra, then he understood. And I appreciate that. He immediately said, oh, that means we were not given proper guidance from childhood. Because our surname, our family name is Khatri, so we eat meat. I said, your ancestors may be the warriors. That's why you got the surname Khatri. But you personally are not Khatri. You're a trader, you're a Vaishya. Then he promised me that he will never eat meat in his life. So, in this regard, I want to say that there are many kind of misconceptions or limited guidelines given, not complete guidelines given. So people, they don't have proper understanding about with regard to the food also, what food we should eat or what we should not, what we should avoid as a human being. Does it make sense to you, Rahulji? You raised this point.
Haji, Haji.
Rahulji, are you there?
Haji, Haji. I heard.
Does it clarify your point, Rahulji?
Yeah, Haji.
Yes. Does it make sense to you what I said?
Haji, bilkul.
Yes. Thank you. So now I will open, I will ask all the participants if you have any more questions, so that in last 5 minutes, you can raise your questions. Then we can conclude the session, today's session.
Sir, I have a question, if I may ask.
Please, go ahead.
Yes, this is Ranika. So this question was something based upon Ayurveda and with a combination of spirituality. So I've heard that people who are a lot into meditation, they have a tendency to have an aggravation of the Vata dosha. Is this true?
People who are doing meditation.
Yes. Those who are like who do prolonged durations of meditation, they have an aggravation of the Vata dosha.
That may be true in some people's case, because they do not do meditation in the right way. The result of meditation should be a calmer mind, more peaceful feeling. But if the result is opposite, that means the person is not doing the meditation properly. Meditation is a dhyana. If you are familiar with the Ashtanga Yoga system, dhyana is the seventh stage, seventh anga of Ashtanga Yoga. Right? So before dhyana, there are 6 stages the person needs to follow. Right? Without following the 6 stages, the person immediately jumps to the 7th stage without proper preparations. Then what kind of result the person will have?
Right.
So see the process. If it is not done in the right way, then we don't get the right results.
Right. Okay.
Same thing, is applied to the medicines also. If the medicines we don't take according to the prescription, then we don't get the proper effect of the medicine.
Right.
So for meditation also, we need to prepare our body and mind. Without preparation, if we do meditation on our own, then it can be harmful. With same thing is applied to yoga also. Nowadays, as I said, yoga has become so popular all around the world, So people just start doing yoga. Sometimes they watch on YouTube online classes they have and all that. So in these kind of situations, I'm not discouraging people to do that, but generally it is more advisable to learn from a proper guru in a proper personal tutelage system. Otherwise, it is said that देखा देखी करे जो योग नष्ट हो काया बड़े रोग. If we just do yoga by watching different things and without proper understanding, then we end up having some problems. Then we say, oh, yoga cannot help. Yoga does not help. It can help provided we follow the proper system. So same rule applies to the meditation also. If we do meditation properly, then it will pacify our vata. It will not aggravate our vata.
Yes.
And that is the objective of doing meditation, to pacify the vata so that our mind becomes more grounded, more balanced. Emotionally also we feel more equipoised, and intellectually we feel sharper. Does it make sense to you what I said?
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, it does make sense. Thank you.
Generally 15
You're
minutes exercise are recommended before doing half an hour meditation.
15 minutes exercise are recommended before doing the meditation.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of exercise you're talking about?
Some movement, I think, hands and legs, some movement
Stretching exercise.
no, some movement like this and even leg, and there are proper exercises given. At least 50.
Yes. See, yes. See what I said, that dhyana is the seventh anga of Ashtanga Yoga. Right? It starts with yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dhyana, dhyana, like that. Right? So exercise is a part of asana. We talk about physical kind of movement and all that. Stretching also is part of asana. So after asana, we need to calm down our system by doing little bit of pranayama. When pranayama is done before dhyana, the quality of dhyana can be much better. This is guaranteed. Because when we do regulate our air circulation in the body, then we do dhyana, then our vata dosha will not get agitated. It will become more balanced. So the person will feel calmer, and that is the objective of doing dhyana. Yes. Do you agree with that, what I said?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Somebody has raised their hand.
Yes, sir. Sir, please continue. For breakfast, you said semi-solid foods. Then for lunch and for dinner, please continue the explanation.
Do we have enough time, Varshaji?
If everyone
Yes.
is okay with it, if everyone
Yes.
is okay, then that's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, sure, sure.
Okay. So now, as I said, lunchtime should be the main meal, the heavy meal. Now, why it is mentioned that one should have heavy proper meal at lunchtime? Because lunchtime normally, as I said, it's around 1 o'clock generally. So 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. is the Pitta period. Fire is very strong. So when the fire is strong, our appetite is good. The digestive fire can be strong. So it can help us to digest food in a timely manner or even faster. So for that reason, one should have proper big meal at lunchtime. Now, how to eat? How to have our meal? Can anyone share with me? How to eat our food?
We have to chew our food, I think 32 or 40 times in the mouth before we swallow it.
Okay. Anybody else wants to share something?
And there is sequence of food which is taken before, after, in the middle, in the end. So different kinds of food are taken in a proper sequence.
Yes, you're right. Yes. What else?
Um,
So this you're
first,
talking about what to eat. I'm talking about how to eat. How
first
to eat
offering
food.
to the God, offering to the God, and then eat.
I think we eat lighter things first. For example, soup, vegetables, before we eat more heavy food. The sequence is this.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, you're talking about the sequence, right? And that
Yes.
sequence also is associated with what to eat at what time. Correct?
Oh.
But I'm talking my question again. I want to ask, I repeat, how to eat.
Sitting on
Somebody said
sitting
to chew 32 to 40 times.
Sitting on the floor,
sitting cross-legged and offer to the God and then eat.
sitting on the floor. Sitting
Yes,
on the
we need to
floor,
sit in the cross-legged pose.
cross-legged
And there
pose,
is also
there's
there
a
is
saying that
also
we
in
drink our
Ayurvedic.
food, which means
Yes,
that
yes, go ahead.
as much that we should drink our food in the sense
Sorry,
that we should drink our food, which means that we should chew it so much that it should almost be in a liquid form before we swallow.
Okay.
And sir, not do
This is
other
the-
things while eating, not work or do something else while eating. Complete concentration on eating.
Should we feel the food? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe feel the food and inhale it.
Of course, there are so many specific guidelines given, but with regard to chewing, different people come up with different numbers. Some people say 32 times, some people say 40 times, some people say 50 times. Now, the texture of the food is not the same. Sometimes we are eating solid food, sometimes we are eating semi-solid food, sometimes it's liquid, right? So now, if the food is semi-solid, it doesn't need so many times we need to chew. Then why should we chew it 32 times or 40 times? And another reason is practical thing is that most of the time we are having our meal with our family members or friends or corporate workers. They have business lunches. So while having your meal, you are discussing something with someone or speaking to someone about something. Then will you focus on talking to the person or will you focus on chewing? So either way, you will miss something, right? So somebody said about making the food in the liquid form and then we swallow it. This is the one sentence answer given in Ayurveda about how to eat food. Drink the solids, eat the liquids. I repeat, drink the solids, eat the liquids. What does it mean?
It means that we should
What
chew
does it
our
mean?
food. It means we should chew our food so well that when we swallow it, it should be liquid, and we should slowly
Correct.
sip water, keeping it in our mouth, and then taking it sip by sip instead
Absolutely
of
right. Thank you. Yes, absolutely right. Drink the liquids in a sip by sip manner, very slowly. Don't gulp it. And the solid food, depending on the texture of the food, consistency of the food, you chew it so well, it becomes liquid and then you swallow it.
Doctors, how do we take water along with
Most of the people, they very good question, Rahulji. Very good question. Yes. So see, now this also, in this particular aspect, specific guidelines are given in Ayurveda. I will share with you general guidelines, not so much specific. General guidelines, which can be applicable to most of you, if not all of you. Ayurveda divides the human life in 3 stages: childhood, adulthood, and old age. Right? So 3 doshas influence us at different stage. particular dosha affects us in different stages. Like in childhood, kapha dosha has strong influence on children's body. That's why children, they grow because of the water and the earth element. So physical growth is possible because of the kapha dosha, right? So at that stage, it is not advisable to give some liquids, plain water particularly, to children while they are having their meal. It should be avoided. Otherwise, it will cause more formation of mucus in the body. The food will not be properly digested and it will get converted into mucus, not transformed into energy. So in childhood, water while having food should be avoided. Then in adulthood, it is up to the person whether the person feels thirsty, person can drink water while having the meal. Otherwise, it is not necessary. It's person's choice in adulthood because fire is strong. So whether a person drinks water while having meal or not, it doesn't make a difference. If he drinks water also while having the meal, the fire element, which is strong in young age, it will help the person to digest food. It will not cause so much of complication. So it is the person's choice whether to drink water while having the meal or not. In old age, particularly after 50, when the vata starts influencing, it is recommended in Ayurveda that one should drink water sip by sip while having the meal to allow the vata to be pacified, to allow the food to go down to the digestive system very smoothly. So I summarize, in childhood, no water while having meal. In young age, adulthood, it's person's choice. In old age, it is necessary for the person to drink water, not too much water, but few sips while having the meal. And in old age particularly, should not drink too much water after having the meal, because that will have dampening effect on the digestive fire and the digestion will be affected badly. While having the meal, water is recommended, but not too much water after the meal. But actually that kind of thing, too much water after the meal, it is recommended for everybody. Should not drink too much water right after the meal. Wait for about 45 or 50 minutes. To be precise, 48 minutes, one Muhurata. It is mentioned in Ayurveda that one should wait for one Muhurat, 48 minutes before he drinks full glass of water after a meal. Does it answer your question, Rahulji?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
48 minutes.
You're welcome. So I think the topic is very interesting. I can go on and on, whole night I can sit with you and discuss with you. But I'm concerned about other people, other participants. You may have some other responsibilities to fulfill.
Dr. Saab, I think you'll need to come again and again and again because our group members here are so interested in all these topics and they also have so many questions. So is it okay if we invite you again in January or February?
No problem.
Okay, that's wonderful.
No problem.
And if you are okay with it,
I will feel honored to be.
Sure. And if you're okay with it, because I noticed that a lot of people have lots of questions. So I could ask the group members to put down their questions and queries and send it forward to you. So then you can, include the questions in your talk. So it becomes easier, I think. Everything can be covered then.
Sure,
Isn't it? I think that would be a good idea, right? So what do you all feel, everybody present here today? Can we do that?
It's a good idea.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So it'll be very nice because then your questions will be answered, and then even for Dr. Saab, for him to create a talk around the queries will also become very easy. No?
Yes. Yes.
Anna. Okay. So I think let's do that. Actually, Dr. Saab, we have a big group.
Yes, maybe I can ask Varsha ji and Trupti ji. If you feel it appropriate, you can share my contact details with the participants.
Yes, of course.
Or
That
whoever
we
is joining
always do.
later.
वो तो हमेशा
And
करते
then
हैं.
they can. Very good.
Yeah, that we always do. We'll put
So then they can
the
send me.
queries. Yeah.
So they
Okay.
can send their even if they are sending the questions personally, then they
Yeah.
can ask some personal questions also, specific questions, which
Correct.
we cannot deal with or we cannot handle in a general group.
Correct. So we'll try and do that. Yeah, of course, we'll share your details and everything. Even this, the video that we have recorded will be put up on YouTube, and many people who missed the live will watch it on YouTube. So they will listen to me telling them to post their questions, and we'll
That's
put
very
it
good.
forward. So that shouldn't be a problem. Okay.
Okay, so I've
That's very
already
good.
I've already shared the contact details on the group. So
Great.
if you have any questions, you can always contact Sharma ji.
Yeah, lovely. Very nice. Very nice. So, well, a vote of thanks is due. Dr. Sharma, thank you so much for coming. It was really an enlightening discussion. And I think when it is to do with the mind, body, and spirit, the questions are never ending. And I think your
Yes,
answers, your answers were also so simple that everybody can understand and implement it immediately. So
Thank
I
you very
think
much.
that was very nice.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So thank you for coming, and I hope and pray that we meet again soon. And Varshaji, thank you again.
Yes, I
for
will look forward to
inviting
that
Dr.
opportunity.
Sharma.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay,
Thank you,
so
Sharma ji. And
thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very